is amazing. Anywhere you turn, anywhere you go, it seems like the word of 2025 is AI, AI, AI. And you sort of knew that going into it, but it's always good to get confirmation and validation. Welcome to Life of a CISO. I'm Dr. Eric Cole, your host, and we'll be taking you on a journey each week on what it takes to be a CISO and what are solutions that you can implement today if you are currently a Chief Information Security Officer or if you want to be one in the future. This is Life of a CISO. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I hope you know what time it is. You know what time it is. It's time. It is time. It is time, my friends, for Life of a CISO with yours truly. The E-Dog is in the house. Let's just jump right into it. It is amazing. Anywhere you turn, anywhere you go, it seems like the word of 2025 is AI, AI, AI. And you sort of knew that going into it, but it's always good to get confirmation and validation. I recently went to the RSA conference in San Francisco, an amazing conference. I think this year, if I heard correctly, they broke a record of over 40,000 people at that event, which is great, showing you how important cybersecurity is. The Secretary of Homeland Security came and spoke at the event. So, I mean, very high visibility and high value. And what was amazing is every year, I haven't been to RSA in a couple of years, but I used to go every year religiously for the first 10 to 12 years of the conference. It's always sort of, what is the theme? Like, what is the theme that everyone's talking about or covering? And I will tell you, it's probably been a couple of years, but this year, it was 100% knockout punch, undisputed heavyweight champion of the world, artificial intelligence. I mean, it was like almost every talk. I mean, even speakers were coming up and like joking, going, okay, I'm going to talk about AI. And they're like, no, actually, we're going to talk about something different, right? The few that actually had non-AI topics. And not a hit, because AI is a big topic area. And AI is taking over. But my concern is, are we actually stepping back, looking at the risks, and talking about the right areas of AI when it comes to cybersecurity and data privacy? So let's break it down. Artificial intelligence, you essentially have your many different areas and models, but it's usually sort of broken down into sort of two areas, machine learning and rule-based systems. Right? Machine learning is where you give it data sets. That's most of the AI that you're using is sort of data set driven. But you also have expert systems. An expert system is where you basically can create a series. It's a little more complex, but essentially a series of if-then statements that would mimic how an expert works. Like if you go to medical is used a lot. And once again, utmost respect for the medical field and doctors. And I'm not going to do it justice because there's a lot more to it than this. But one could perceive incorrectly, but one could perceive like when you go to a doctor, they ask you a series of questions. Do you have a fever? Do you have pain? Do you have a headache? Do you have a cough? Do you have a sore throat? Do you have a runny nose? And sort of based on those, they can sort of start going down one path or another, right? Because one can mean sort of virus, one can mean bacteria. So what if you took 10 or 20 doctors and you sort of went through their process or logic of how they ask those questions? You could create an expert system that could ask you similar questions. And there are some of those online which they use for pre-screening purposes, where they'll go in and say, okay, this, and this, so they can have an idea ahead of time to save time and get you headed in that right direction. And whether you even need to talk to a doctor or maybe potentially just some over-the-counter or rest or other factors. So that's sort of the two areas. Expert systems, where you're basically going in and understanding how an expert thinks. What are the series of questions they ask? And based on yes or no answers, how do you proceed down to do that? So I remember AI is not new. Right? It's been around for a long time. When I was in college, I took some AI classes, and I sort of took and wrote an expert system on super basic, but basically sort of on animal classification. So we had to go in, and so somebody was trying to figure out what type of animal it was. So you'd go in and say, okay, how many legs does it have? Right? Does it have 2 legs or 4 legs? And then if it has 2 legs, you then go, okay, does it have wings? Right? If it has 4 legs, you can ask questions. Does it have a tail? Right? Does it have this or that? And you could basically go down and ask a series of questions and be able to start to figure out either what category or what type of animal it is. So when we're looking at artificial intelligence, whether it's expert systems or machine learning, there's the techniques, the machine learning techniques like neural networks or Bayesian or other different components out there. But what we really need to talk about when it comes to cybersecurity and risk and exposure, the data sets. It's only as good as the data set. That's one of the big things like they're talking about when like TikTok coming to the U.S. or being acquired by a U.S. company. They were all talking about the algorithms, right? They have unique special algorithms that make their platform better, this and that. Now, don't get me wrong, algorithms are powerful, but it's the data that really makes it special. It's the data that creates a security risk. With TikTok, I'm not concerned about the algorithms. Whether the algorithms stay in China or come to the US or vice versa, here, there. What about all of the data that's been collected over the last 10 plus years? Where's all that data? As far as we know, that data is on servers in China and is extremely valuable. Imagine if you have all the data on how, and I know it's not just the US, but we'll just focus on the US here for a second, on the US or a specific country, how their citizens act, behave, search. And you can then go in and feed that into artificial intelligence or neural networks and start doing predictive analysis of how people operate and how they think and how they perform. And this, to me, is why I think Amazon got in the game to buy TikTok. And I think because they're really smart folks there, and they know the future and they know where things are going. My bet is on that Amazon will probably either acquire or partner or be part of the deal. And here's why. If you're the #1 e-commerce site where you're going to buy anything, you go to Amazon.com. Right? And there's really, individual stores have tried to compete, but the amount of information and products that Amazon has, it's really, really hard to directly compete with them. But as you know, as you go down the road, convenience, features, and other factors. Well, if you're the largest e-commerce site and you want to continue to be that, don't you want to understand and know how people act and how people behave? So all of a sudden, if somebody is going in and doing videos about, okay, pain management, right? I've gone in and I went in and I researched Tylenol versus Advil and this and that, and here's what I found, blah, blah, blah. And then you see people following it. If you ran a store or an e-commerce, wouldn't that be very valuable? Because now when those people log into Amazon, you could start giving them advertisements or sales or deals for those different types of over-the-counter medicine or other things like that. And I have friends now that are sort of going, this is getting really creepy. Like I was just with a friend the other day, and we're talking about different things, and then they go in to search on it, and it automatically fills in. Like we were talking and going, okay, how old is Warren Buffett? And we were trying to guess how old he is. And then they took out their phone and they put up Google and they started typing HO. And you know how it does the autofill? the first autofill was, how old is Warren Buffett? Now, what are the chances, my friends? What is the probability of that happening, right? And then it continued. Like we were then going in and we were talking about different vehicles, and we were talking about a certain model of a Lamborghini and how much it was. And I was sort of getting confused. Was this the 300 or the 500 Lambo and this and that? And so they went to search on it. And once again, they put the HO of how much, and immediately, how much is a Lamborghini, right? Boom, right? And it's just like, it's really creepy, right? Or really powerful, depending on how you look at it. So to me, for Amazon to have access to that information is a very, very powerful thing. So if I was at Amazon, I would definitely make a big bid for that. So now we're talking with AI. It's about the data. How are those data sets being protected, secured, controlled, and monitored? And I'm starting to see different people talk about this in some articles, but not enough, right? As chief information security officers or as security professionals or really anybody, we have to really ask every time we're going in and we work with one of these AI models, right? Whether it's DeepSeek or Grok 3 or ChatGPT, whatever your favorite model is, we're giving it data. We're giving it information. And it can use that information to train its models to make them better and better and better over time. So now the question is, if I go in and I start giving it my data, it's no longer my data. And one thing that I'm very aware of and is very beneficial, but I'm also very cautious of it, is this idea of going in and training AI so it can actually understand and know how you think and how you act. So for example, people will go in, and I do this too, it's great. If you do podcasts, you can go in and load your podcasts in to an AI model and say, tell me what my general themes are. Because many of us don't know, like we talk and there's themes that are embedded that we don't even realize that are embedded. So what are some of my common themes, or what are my common taglines, or what are some unique things that make my podcast different from this person's podcast? And we give them all the info and data so they can go out, search, and analyze all that information. But do you realize that it now has your information in its data set that it's now using to train and apply others? So now other people could do that against you. So now the question is, if it's public data, if I'm going in and giving it my podcasts, which are public, and I'm telling it to analyze and correlate it, that's okay. But now what happens if I wanted to help me with business strategy? So what happens now if I go in and I start giving AI some of my spreadsheets, some of our data, some of our financials, and going, okay, I want you to do forecasting for me. I want you to forecast out based on the trends that you're seeing in this data. Where is this going? I mean, what areas should we change? Where should we improve? Can you compare us to our competitors? Now you're giving it non-public information. What is it doing with that? Are you protecting it and keeping it locally? Or is that information then going out on the web and being used to then train other models? And then here's the crazy thing. Now, what if a competitor goes in and says, hey, can you find out financial information for Secure Anchor or Dr. Cole or Company X or Company Y? And that information is not public, but you put it in your AI model. It populated the data set, and guess what? Now, inadvertently, without you realizing it, now it's out in the public arena, right? It's out there in that public arena that now people can access it or take advantage of it. So we now have to be careful of, okay, where are we going and how are we controlling our information? Because it's so easy to get caught up in coolness and cost savings and amazingness. Yes, I admit I can sometimes go in and get into some amazing brainstorming sessions with myself through AI. Because I used to go in and sort of ask myself questions, and that's a little harder. Eric, what do you think of this? But I have my AI models trained, and I keep them private. But I have my AI models trained, and in the morning I'll go and say, okay, let's brainstorm this topic. I'm struggling in this area. What do you think of this? Or how should I do that? Or and essentially, if it's trained enough, you can actually have an interactive discussion with yourself as a third-party person, right, and get feedback. Because let's face it, who knows you better than anybody else? You. So wouldn't that be cool if you could have a trusted advisor yourself giving you advice, helping you see your blind spots? Because if you ask yourself, show me my blind spots, it's very hard. Most people have no idea. But if we could feed all that data to AI and we can now go in and say, show me my blind spots, amazing. Like I know some areas they're using it in is, let's just say golf. If I'm going to the driving range and I hit 10 balls, 2 are straight and the rest are all over the place. Clearly I did something different, but I thought I did the same thing. I have no idea why 2 went straight and the rest had no idea. But what if I videotape that and I videotape and I label it going, okay, the first swing went to the left. The second swing went 50 feet. Third string was straight and went 200 yards. Fourth, and I label the good and the bad, and then I feed it into AI and say, okay, can you look at video 2 and 4, which were the straight ones that went 200 yards, and tell me what I did differently there than in those other videos? And you might even tell it 2 and 4 were my best shots, and the other 8 were terrible. Can you tell me what the difference is? And it typically can, right? Super powerful. But then the first issue we get into with AI is how much replacement of humans is okay? Where do we get to the point where we are now spending more time with AI than with other human beings? And then what impact does this have to a lot of professions? If I can now go in and I can video my golf swing and I could feed it into AI and it can give me tips and tricks, potentially as good as, or maybe even better, depending on the level of pro that you're dealing with, do I really need to hire a coach now? So now what impact does that have to that area or profession? Right? So that's the first scary area is AI is great. And we're like going in and, oh, AI is automating this and AI is replacing people here and there and here. But the question is, at what point do we get to the point, and this is what scares me, where AI is so good, so fast, and consistent enough that we don't need humans anymore? Right? That's a scary, scary thought. And people are like, no, it'll never happen. But wait a second. If AI is replacing jobs, companies are actually going in now and saying, we don't need a human to do this. We can have AI do it. And the cool thing with AI is you don't have to pay it a salary. You don't have to give it medical benefits. You don't have to give it a day off. It can work 24/7, right? And you don't have to feed it. It doesn't need vacations, right? It doesn't have sick days or anything like that. Now, yes, computers can break. Hardware has to be replaced. But unfortunately, and I don't like saying it, but when you look at hardware costs versus human costs, unfortunately, those hardware costs are cheaper. So if now we are already, companies are already having AI and computers do things that humans used to do, how far is too far? And this is what concerns me is there are no laws. There's no regulations, right? Yes, some entities are putting specific things in place, but right now there's really no control over AI, and that's what scares me. I love tech. I think I already told you I use AI, I love AI, but to me, we're going way too fast. Right? We're getting into some dangerous areas. I'll give you another big one with companies is AI is basically redefining what is plagiarism, or in essence, making written word harder to compete. Because here's the reality. what if somebody gets one of my books, Cyber Crisis, right there. You see it on the screen. Good old Cyber Crisis, one of my books. And what if they go in and they put it in digital form? Right? So even though you're not supposed to do this, right? People could do this. They could take my book, scan in the pages, and do OCR. Please don't do this, right? And have a digital copy. Then what if they give it to AI and they say, here's a 200-page book. You have seen a lot of my papers. I've fed you my papers. You know my writing style. You know how I work and how I operate. I want you to take this book, rewrite it in my own words. Don't use any of the original words from Eric. Write it in my own words, and you know how I write because I fed you all those models. Plus, I want you to come up with tips and tricks, because in the end of his book, he doesn't have tips and tricks. He doesn't have key takeaways. He doesn't have these. So I want you to then take each chapter and make it even better. Put in tips and tricks and key takeaways. And then AI goes off for an hour or two and produces this. Now, technically, according to the current laws, you could then publish that book and compete with me. Yet, did you write it? I mean, people would say, well, you fed it your writing style, but you didn't actually generate the context. But here's the reality. It's completely different words. So there's no plagiarism or copyright. Taking somebody's work, taking somebody's thoughts or ideas, and rewriting it in your own words is not plagiarism, according to the current definitions. So now the question is, where do we draw the line? If you're using, does it need to be laws that says, now how do you prove this? I don't know. But should there be a law that if you take somebody's work and you use AI to create your own version of it, is that technically plagiarism? Is that technically violating a copyright? Because you basically are using computers to create something that was Eric's original work. Without Eric's original work, you would not have been able to do this, and you didn't actually create anything. You asked questions, but the computer actually created it. But unfortunately, the way most of these models work today is if AI generates something on your behalf, whether it's text or images or others, with most of the models, you now go in and own that copyright, because you created an original image. And I see people doing this, and artists, rightfully so, are getting very, very upset, where they're now going in and you have a favorite artist or famous prince, and you can feed them 3 or 4 of these, $20, $30, $50,000, $100,000 pieces of art, and then you can ask AI to generate something similar but unique. I like these different pieces, or better yet, what if you like a piece of art, but you don't like the red that's in it, or you like this artist or that artist? You now can go in, and instead of hiring an artist to create a custom piece, you can just tell AI, I like this part in this piece, I like the bottom left in this piece, the upper right in this piece, I like the center in this piece. Can you take those unique things and create a unique piece of art for me that I can then potentially print and put on my wall? And once again, is that okay? Right? You start getting into moral and ethical issues right now, not legal issues, because there are no laws governing or around AI. And this is where I think it's wild, is many colleges, and I still have 2 kids in college, many colleges are actually telling the students, you are not allowed to use AI to write your papers. You can use AI to do basic research, but you have to write the paper. If AI writes the paper, we'll fail. So now they're creating moral and ethical boundaries, but it's not technically against the law. So now the question is, if you use AI, and this will happen. Maybe it's happened already and I don't know it. I do a lot of expert witness work, so I know law cases, but most of the law cases are in patent infringement or hacking or things like this. But here's the reality. If a student uses AI to write portions of the report and they edit it, So AI creates the first draft and they add sentences, they modify it, right? But the original base was AI, but they added and modify it. And a professor decides that it was AI and they failed a student. Or the university decides because the student is using AI for all these different classes that they're now, because they failed every class, they're going to kick them out for doing it. Are there legal grounds? Could you go in and say, well, that's not fair? You know what I mean? How, just because I used a computer, because everyone uses a computer and everyone does research with a computer. So where's the lines? If AI writes 100% of it, okay, maybe it's bad. If AI writes 0 of it, then it's okay. But I'm guessing if AI wrote 5% of it, is that okay? Maybe. 10 to, well, you see, it's sort of, where's that line? At some point, you're going to say too much is not enough, but is anyone going to really give that number? And how do you calculate that? How do you actually go in and say, okay, this student, 60% of it was AI, so they failed, but this student only 40% was AI, so it's okay. And then here's the real big question. If you go in and you're saying that my paper was written in AI as a student and you're going to fail me, if I could go in and prove that 10 other students or 5 other students in that class used AI and you didn't fail them because you didn't catch them, you only caught me, then you get into a whole set of other issues of discrimination and bias and other factors there. So to me, I understand why universities are doing it. I understand that you want students to write and do original thought, but it's a slippery slope, right? Going in and saying that you can't use it, and if we think you did, right, then we're going to fail you. That gets into a lot of legalities because there are no laws around it. So these are all things that as a CISO, you need to start working with your executive team and company. Now, here's the trick. You can't write a policy that says no AI. You can, but no one's going to follow it. Right? Remember one of the golden rules of cybersecurity. If cybersecurity negatively impacts the business, it's wrong. We saw this. People tried to stop BYOD. People tried to stop cloud. I remember in the beginning, right? I was teaching classes when cloud first came out. And students would wear to my class, there were shirts from vendors, no cloud on my watch, right? And people would say, there is no way anyone is going to use cloud at my company. And what I say to everyone is, they already are. Because guess what? For a credit card and $7.99, right, you can sign up for cloud-based services. Right? It's cheap, it's easy, and a lot of times they might not even put it on the expense report. So even if you do the traditional method of working with accounting and seeing what people are invoicing, you might not even catch it. We couldn't stop BYOD, and we're definitely not going to stop AI. But the trick is we need to start honing in on the critical points and components of it. So to me, the two big things you need to be discussing at the boardroom is what are people allowed to feed into AI? What business assets or digital assets are they allowed to use with AI? Because here's the reality, and I'm sure there's going to be cases on this. If you have information that you're considered proprietary or classified or trade secrets, but you're putting it into AI and that gets populated out to the public, can you now claim that those actually are classified or trade secrets? Because one of the requirements with trade secrets is you have to have reasonable measures to protect it. And if you put something on your website that's publicly available for anybody to see, you can't claim that's a trade secret. Everyone has access to it. And if it's public, it can't be a trade secret. So the question now is if people in your organization are putting what you label trade secrets into AI and it's making it available to the public because of how the models work and the data sets, is that no longer a trade secret? So that's the first conversation. How do we control and manage data? So maybe we go in and we have rules that, okay, you cannot use certain information in AI. You can't put this. You can only use AI for public research. and maybe just start putting boundaries around. And then the other issue, as I mentioned, is this whole plagiarism. If somebody hires you to write documentation, right? A big area is documentation, test writing, right? There's a lot of content generation contracts out there. What if people now are using AI to do that? So now you bid on a contract and it's a time and materials. And you go in and you say, okay, it takes 100 hours of 5 people. So 500 hours to generate this. But now if those people are going in and they're using AI, now you could justify going, okay, AI would take a human to do 20 hours. Now, contractually, ethically, morally, legally, if I go in and I have something, do something on my behalf that would take me 20 hours of work to do, can I bill 20 hours? All right. I mean, most people are going to say no, but it's an interesting question. Well, if I did it and I produced something very similar, because I proofread it and I modified it, this would be very similar to what I would produce. And it would take me 20 hours. So if I have help that gets the same product that would have taken me 20 hours and it's time and materials, isn't that still 20 hours? Maybe, maybe not. So these are sort of a lot of the issues you want to think about. But I want to put together the video because as CISOs and a lot of people I was talking to at RSA, they're struggling because AI is so big, right? There's so many angles. How do you tackle it? To me, from a CISO standpoint, from a security standpoint, you tackle 2 things. The data sets, the data you're giving it, whether it's private or trade secrets, and the implication of content generation or quote unquote plagiarism. Those are the 2 areas you want to focus in on. Because if we can get our data controlled and protected, and we can make sure we're not getting into legal trouble with our customers on what content we're generating, humans versus computers, those are going to be the 2 areas that are going to be the most problematic for companies, for security, and for data privacy. So if you can go in and hone on just those 2 areas, the control of your critical data, what you do or don't feed into AI, and content generation, those are the areas that if you could win those battles, it'll go a long way to protecting and securing AI's use in your company down the road.